much. What a welcome. I don't know about you guys, but I've had a pretty amazing weekend so far here at Festival, listening to some really cool speakers. And, I've noticed this one word that's been popping up, and that word is echo. Echo. To me, if I'm to break that word down a little bit, it says to me, a sound that is put out into the world and is repeated back to you. And so my talk today is going to be centered around this word, echo. Imagine if my voice could be put out into the world and I could watch as that is echoed back to me from my children's children's children. Imagine if my story could do the same. When I was a little girl, I used to hang out around the dining room table. It wasn't for the food. It was because that's where all the adult conversations used to happen. And I actually just wanted to listen in and see what the latest gossip was. My mum and my dad, my aunties and my uncles, they would be having these conversations at the dining room table. And sometimes I'd hear these words, 3 words, history repeating itself. Now, what they were talking about was a woman in an abusive relationship. A woman who was being physically hurt by her partner. And even at this really young age, I had made a conscious decision that I would never, ever allow myself to be in a relationship with somebody who thought it was okay to abuse me. Here's the thing. I actually just didn't know how not to. So when I was 19 years old, I became that person. I found myself having to ask for permission just to hang out with my friends, being told what to wear. I remember feeling like I wouldn't amount to much. And then there were these words that went like, no one will ever love you the way that I love you. And for 4 years of my life, I honestly believe this to be true. My only boundary in a relationship was that if things were to get slightly physical, that would be my cue to go. I guess you can imagine what happened 4 years into this relationship. And as I said, that was my boundary. And because this person had crossed it, I knew I had to go. And so I did. It was about a year later, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to go on my first ever overseas holiday. And so I booked this 10-day trip on a tropical island. I went there to spend that time alone. While I was waiting at the airport, I stumbled across this article on Facebook. And I'm reading through it, and it's literally describing the things that I experienced in this relationship. But then it used these words, mental and emotional abuse. I had never heard of it before. I was educated by Facebook, but not a human being. And so here I am, and I'm sitting in this airport, and I'm thinking, wow, history has repeated itself. But it wasn't a one-off event. It had happened right the way through. And I'm sitting there, and I'm feeling so confronted. And then I get really angry, because I can't wrap my head around how it is that I can tell you the height of a tree based on distance and angles, but I could not identify that I was in an abusive relationship. There is something wrong with that picture. I begin to think about my little sister, my nieces, my friends. I begin to think about every young woman across Aotearoa, and I wonder how much potential is on hold because of this lack of education. It fired me up, and I sat on that island for 10 days alone, and I just softened. I softened into the discomfort of what happened to me, and I made a decision. I will not sit back. I will not watch this happen. I will do something about it. See, I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit tired of this history that repeats itself in our country. In 2015, it was Christmas Eve, and at my dining room table, I launched the organisation Prepare NZ. I teach young women how to have healthy relationships, firstly with themselves, then with others. I teach them how to identify mental and emotional abuse in a relationship and to know what to do if they witness it or if they experience it. I deliver workshops and talks and online resources to carry out work that I honestly believe is so important in this country. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's some wonderful work done in our country to help people out of a situation. But I see a real problem, and it breaks my heart. And so what I'm trying to do is start right at the other end of the spectrum and work where relationships are in their infancy, and to start with the early stage signs that we may deal with so they don't escalate to become what we see now. I was asked today if I could talk about some of the challenges that I face with launching an organisation. And what I can let you know is that, it's a very lonely journey. But if there's one thing that I know for sure is that your biggest challenge will always be yourself, right? I am my biggest challenge in this. It is not easy to stand here and own the fact that I became history repeating itself. But you know what? I do it not for me, not to point finger at my past, but I do it for something bigger than myself. Some of you would have been inspired this weekend. You would have watched someone, heard something, interacted in something, and you might have had an idea pop up inside of you. Don't let go of that. Imagine if I just forgot and did nothing about that idea that popped up inside of me when I was on that island. Imagine if I left it alone. Every single one of us in this room has so much potential. We all have a story. Our stories are not easy to share in front of a big audience like this, but we should do it because this is where change starts, right? I just want you to imagine if Beyonce didn't sing. Imagine if she hid that voice from the world. Imagine if Guy Ryan decided not to take an extra step on his idea to launch Inspiring Stories. We would not be here today. Okay? You are going to face challenges, and often it's a little bit of doubt that comes up inside of you. But can I just show you something? I've never done this before. This is what it feels like to share your story in front of an audience. It's friggin' scary, okay? But you do it. You do it because there's a fire inside of you and you refuse to sit back and watch this BS happen across our world. And so today, all I wanted to do was remind you, you have a story and an opportunity, work with it. And in every step you take, in every word that you say, allow that to be the echo that's transcended into the future of our children's children's children. And we watch as that comes back and it creates history that is so worth repeating itself. Thank you.